Good afternoon. My name is Elliott, and we're coming from Garden City Beach, South Carolina on April the 29th, 2019. Tonight, we have the pleasure of interviewing my parents, John and Jean Elliott. And John Thomas Elliott was born January the 22nd, 1927, and he lived in Dunedin, South Carolina, a suburb of Greenville, one of the textile mill villages in Greenville. And Alma Jean Harris was born February the 4th, 1932, and she was born in lived in West Greenville, South Carolina when she was born, again a suburb of Greenville. So tonight, Vicki and I are going to start a series of interview questions that will be documentation of their lives and their experiences for us, for the children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and for generations to come, that they will be able to experience the lives of John and Jean Elliott. So here we go. Okay, Dad, what is one of your very earliest memories as a child?
My first earliest memories as a child was I was about 5 years old, and I lived on a sharecropping farm over here on the northern part of Greer, South Carolina.
Okay. Mother, what is one of your very earliest memories as a child?
The earliest memory I had, I guess, was when I lived in West Greenville. I lived on Burdett Street, and my father was a policeman in West Greenville.
Okay. Well, if that was one of your earliest memories as a child, starting when you started school, what is one of your earliest memories when you started school? And the question is, did you walk to school, which I'm assuming you did? They probably didn't have school buses, but if you walked to school, how far did you have to walk to school as a child, Dad?
I walked to school from the first grade through the 11th grade. I have never rode a car, bus, or any type of vehicle to grammar school or high school.
How far was it to your school?
How far? My grammar school was about a mile, and my high school was about a quarter of a mile.
Okay. Mother, how far did you have to walk to school?
All I had was about 2 blocks to walk to school.
Okay.
And through 1st through 5th grade.
Okay. Okay, Dad, what was your home life like growing up? How would you describe your home life growing up as a child?
Well, my home life was, I'm a member of 12 children, and my home life was when one was born, one was married off. We never did have all 12 at home at the same time.
Okay, Mother, can you describe your home life as a child? What's some of your memories as a child growing up?
Well, I had one brother, and I guess he was my best friend, and we just grew up together and had a lot of fun.
Was he older or younger?
He was 2 years and 6 months older than me.
Okay. And what was his name?
John.
Okay. Well, tell us about a time, here's the question is, tell us about a time as a child or a teenager that you came to the aid of a brother or sister. So, okay, Dad, go ahead.
Well, one of the childhood memories I had, we had wash days on Monday all the time that we were out of school. And I can remember we had a line of wash tubs lined up, number 3 tub, number 1 tub, number 2 tub. And Irvin, my brother, 18 months younger than me, we were destined to take care of the 3 tubs, make sure the water went from reaching from one tub to the other tub. And we had a light tub, a number 1 tub, with clothes in it, and Irvin dropped the tub, and it landed on his toe, and he went into a running fit, and he went around the house and kind of over into other people's yard, and he stepped on a part of the top of a Coke bottle, and it cut his big toe pretty bad, and somebody had told me that and it was bleeding real bad, and somebody told me the best way to stop blood like that is go to your stove and get a handful of soot and pack it on that wound, and that'd stop the bleeding. And that's what I did. I run in there, and it's in the summertime, no fire in the stove, and got a handful of soot and packed it into that wound, and it stopped the blood. And that's one of the things I did to aid one of my brothers.
Okay, good. And it really worked?
It worked.
Okay.
It worked.
Good. Okay, Mother. What was the time that you can remember as a child or a teenager that you came to the aid of your brother, John Jr.?
It was always when the boys run him home from school, and because he was bullied quite a bit, and I guess I was just a big sister to take care of him.
So he was bullied even before the day of bullying. He was bullied as a child, and they would chase him home, and you would come to his aid?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, moving right along. Tell us about a time as a child or a teenager that one of your brothers or sisters came to your aid.
Well, I've told this before, and I'll tell it again. One of the things is my older brother David, who is 10 years older than me, we were living on this sharecropping farm over north of Greer, and we had a creek running through that farm. Not a creek, but it's an oversized creek, like a semi-river. And I didn't have it. I was only about 5 years old. I had no knowledge of the depth of it. And I walked out into it, and all of a sudden I was over my head, and my brother David, he dove in and came out, and it wasn't over his head, but it was way over my head, being a 5-year-old child, and pulled me to the bank to safety.
Okay. Okay, Mother, since you came to aid of John Jr. a lot of times, can you remember a time when you, as a child or as a young girl, or that you came to the aid of your brother, since you didn't have any sisters, that you came to the aid of your brother? Not really? No? Okay, well, you just...
I think he
came
did
to
wrong.
her aid.
Right, you mean,
He came to your aid.
right,
Tell her when he came to
you
your
said
aid.
it,
Keep going. When he came to your aid.
yes, and
Can
John,
you edit this?
Keep going. Stop.
Okay, well, my brother was 2 years and 6 months older than me, and naturally I looked up to him, and he looked after me, and when I was little, and gave in to me a lot, and normally let me have things I wanted.
Let you have your way.
Yeah, let me have my way. I was his baby sister.
Okay. Okay, Dad. This question will just apply to you, not Mother, but because I'm aware of that you got run over by a car when you were a child. But tell us about that time as a young boy that you got run over by a car.
Well, that's one of my earliest memories. I said a while ago of remembering anything that happened in my lifetime. And I was 5 years old, and we had a hired hand that worked on the farm with us, and he had given me a cap, and I put it on my head, and I really loved that cap because his name was Alton Arms, and he was a good hand helping my dad run the farm. And I always went with my brothers to go out to the road waiting on the school bus to come by. And there were 5 to 10 people out there waiting on that school bus to come by. And all of a sudden, one of those boys jerked a hat off my head and kind of threw it like a frisbee. And I went to get the car out, and get my hat out in the middle of the road, and a car hit me. did a lot of damage to me. I broke my leg, tore up my right knee, busted my mouth off. I had stitches all in my mouth, busted my head up. And I stayed in Shriners Hospital about 3 weeks. And that was about the earliest thing that I can really remember being a 5-year-old.
Okay, good. Okay. Now the next question is, what kind of work? You said something about your dad working on the farm, but what kind of work? Our mother, this will be your question to answer first. What kind of work did your dad do?
My daddy was a policeman. From the time I can remember, he was a policeman. And
Or where?
up till he retired, he was a policeman in West Greenville, up till I was probably about 12 years old, and then we moved to Woodside, and he was a policeman there till he retired.
At Woodside Mill?
Woodside Mill.
So he was like a security guard or policeman at Woodside?
He was a policeman.
Policeman for the Woodside?
For the Woodside community.
Community, okay. Okay. Dad, what kind of work do you remember your dad doing? What kind of jobs did he hold, as you remember?
Well, my dad worked in several mills around Greenville. And as I said, you said earlier, I was born in over on Duke Street in Dunedin. And I can remember the first thing I remember my dad doing was running a one-horse farm over in north of Greer. And that's the first thing I can remember doing. But my dad worked in several cotton mills, and between 2 terms of being a sharecropper, the rest of his life he worked in and out of cotton mills.
Okay, that's good. Okay, and this question will be for both of you, since Dad, you were born during the Great Depression in the late 20s, and then carrying over into the early 30s, Mother, when you were born, and you suffered the results of the Depression, and the economy was very bad. So growing up, I'll call it during the Great Depression years and the years thereafter where times were hard and the greatest generation was really born, do you ever remember a time when, as a result of the Great Depression and times are hard, did you ever go to bed hungry?
I never went to bed hungry in my life. And I was too young to know anything about the Depression, because I was born right at the end of it, and I just grew up knowing it was a depression, but I never had the effects of it.
Okay. Dad, since you grew up in a family of 12 and you were kind of in the middle, they're not an exact middle, but you had 5 older brothers and sisters and then 6 younger ones, how were things around your house during the early years that you can remember?
The early years, you're talking about the Depression?
Yes.
Okay, the early years of the Depression, I was born in 1907, and that was just the beginning of the Great Depression. I don't remember too much about it, but I can remember the end of it when Herbert Hoover was defeated by Franklin D. Roosevelt, and things began to get better. And I can remember my family receiving aid from the federal government on some issues like cheese and flour and stuff like that, but I never did go to bed hungry, and to my knowledge, none of my family did.
So as a result of a governmental program, you mean you got an allotment of flour and cheese that your mom was able to use to prepare meals for a family of 12 or close to the 12 number?
Right.
Okay. Well, okay, now we're going to move over to questions related to school that you remember as a child and as a elementary as well as high school. So the first question I'll ask you, Mother, did you like school, going to school in general? Did you like school?
I liked school, and I enjoyed going to school because I had a lot of friends there, and I had to walk to school, and probably walk maybe a mile to school every day and a mile back home.
Okay. Okay. Dad, did you enjoy your school years? Can you?
Yeah, I enjoyed from the first grade all the way through the 11th grade, and I can remember the names of every teacher I had in every grade, and I enjoyed meeting my teacher every morning. You know, she stood at the door and welcomed all of us in, and each from year to year to year. And I enjoyed it. I was in a family of 12, and I was really glad to see new people.
Okay. Okay. Mother, what was your favorite subject in school?
Probably when we went to lunch and had lunch.
Okay. I'm not sure that's a subject, but it was a period of in your day of school, so you enjoyed your lunch. Did you take your lunch, you mean, or did you
No,
eat
we
the
had
school
lunch
lunches?
there,
Huh?
and I played sports and I loved sports, but are we talking about
What did you like?
high school?
Well, either, it doesn't matter. Whatever you want to answer to. Is it elementary or high school? I mean, do you enjoy math subjects or English or sports and lunch?
I'm gonna go back to lunch again.
Oh, okay. Dad, what about you? What was your favorite subject in school?
My favorite subject in school was history. I've always been a history nut, and I enjoyed learning things that had happened way before my time, and somehow or another history was just my favorite subject, and still is to today at 92 years old.
Well, you must have passed that on to me because that was one of my favorite subjects in school. And from what I know of my grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, Barnes and Elliott, say that both of their favorite subjects are history. So I guess it's just in the genes somehow. Okay. Now, moving from school over to the subject of going to church. Did you go to church regularly growing up? Dad, what about you? Did you go to church?
I went to church. I started the earliest I can remember going to church. I'm sure I went to church earlier, but I can remember going to church probably when I was 6 years old. And we went to church every Sunday just like it was meant to be, you know, just like we had armed guards taking us to church. Our whole family went to church. I can remember going to church from 6 till I got to be old enough to go into the Navy.
Okay, and what church was that?
City View First Baptist Church. I started going there when I was 6 years old, and I'm still going there today after 87 years.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Mother, now your turn. Do you remember, did you go to church regularly growing up as a child?
As I remember, I did go to church regular, and undoubtedly I can't remember beyond 6 years old, but I'd say from 6 on, I enjoyed going to church, and I believed in the Lord. I loved to go to church and be at church, and I was a Baptist.
Okay.
And got saved when I was 8 years old.
Okay, and I think I remember you saying your dad was a Baptist and your mother was of the Methodist faith, and so
I chose the Baptist.
Okay, good. Okay, now the next question I'd like to ask is for each of you to tell us about one of your very happiest times that you can remember when you were either a child or a teenager. One of your happiest times. Doesn't have to be the happiest. If you know what the happiest time was, it'd be that. If not, just one of them. One of the very happiest times that you can remember as a child or a early teenager. Whichever one of you want to go first.
Well, probably the happiest time before I met my wife was when I was in the service, and we won the war with Germany. And then when Japan surrendered and I was in the Navy getting ready to make an all-out invasion on Japan, and they surrendered, that was probably one of the happiest times of my life, knowing I was going to get back home and be with my family again.
And you were still a teenager?
I still a teenager. I went in when I was 17 and come out when I was 19.
Well, that's amazing, because today most of the people are teenagers. Their mama's still running around taking care of them. So that's amazing that back then you left and went off to into World War II and was in the Navy, then came back out and were still a teenager when you got out. Okay, Mother, what about you?
As a teenager,
Well, as a child or teenager, what do you remember as one of the happiest times?
as a teenager, the happiest time is probably when I met John, my husband, and I was 14 when I met him.
Okay. What do you look like?
The handsomest thing that you have ever laid two eyes on, and he still is.
Oh, okay.
And I love him as much today as I did the day I met him and the day I married him.
Okay, thank you. Now, we're supposed to be telling the truth about one of these questions. We're
And
supposed to...
that is 70 years.
70 years, okay. Okay, now here's the next question is for each one of you to tell us about or remember one of the biggest or the biggest local or state news event that you could remember growing up. One of the biggest events that you remember as a child or when you were young growing up. What's one of the biggest news events, not nationally, but locally or within the state, or at least local in Greenville area where you grew up?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
Okay. Locally, probably one of the most biggest thing that happened in Greenville when, as I was growing up, I was still going to come out of the Navy and went back to Parker High School and played football. And we just got through football practice, and I went up in the main part of Parker High School in the hallway, putting some books up, and all of a sudden, one of the biggest noise I've ever heard in my life, all the lockers rattled in the hallway, and I thought everything was going to fall down.
Uh-huh.
And I thought the boiler had exploded in the school, but it come to find out that Ideal Laundry Company, the huge gas tank exploded and completely destroyed the Ideal Laundry and all the houses around it. And 4 people got killed in that explosion. And that's one of the biggest things that I can recall happened right in Greenville itself.
Uh-huh. And it was called the Ideal Laundry?
Ideal Laundry.
Okay. Okay, Mother, what about you? What's one of you?
I'm going to agree with my husband on that.
You remember the Ideal Laundry exploding yourself?
I most certainly do.
And that was a big event at that time in Greenville.
It broke glasses. It broke window glasses for a mile away.
Okay. Well, the next question that I'd like to ask each of you, and either one of you can go first, whichever one y'all decide wants to go first, but tell us about one of the very saddest of times that you can remember as a child or a teenager. Whichever one of you would like to go first, whichever is one of your saddest times as a child or teenager.
Well, one of the saddest times I can remember when I was a teenager that probably my family, nobody, when I was a teenager, nobody in my family had died yet, but my grandpa, he died, and I used to go down and spend a week with him during the summer, help hold the cotton and the corn, and I spent a week down there with him when I was a youngster in grammar school from about the 3rd grade on through the 7th grade. And when he died, that was really one of the most saddest times in my life that my grandfather died. I knew him. I come to spend a lot of time with him, and I enjoyed his company. He was a real smart man, and that probably, since nobody had died in my immediate family, that was probably the saddest time I can remember as a child.
Okay, was this your grandfather Elliott or grandfather Watson?
My grandfather, Phil Elliott.
Phil Elliott. Okay,
Yeah.
so it was your grandfather Elliott on your dad's side.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, mother. What about you? What is one of your saddest times that you can remember as a child or as a teenager?
Well, I feel sure that I had some, but at this time I don't remember.
Okay. Well, now, since you both agreed that the Ideal Laundry was the biggest event that happened locally, what about the biggest national or international news event that you can remember growing up?
The biggest for me was when the war was over.
When the war was over?
Yeah, World War II.
Okay. Okay.
And I have a second one, is when President Roosevelt died.
Okay. President Roosevelt, okay.
And the train come through Greenville with his body.
Carrying his body, and
Yes.
people got to go out and see the
And
train
we got
pass
to go out
through.
and see the train pass by. With
President
Nancy.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Dad, how about you? What's
Well, as a teenager, I guess the biggest news event nationally to me was the attack on Pearl Harbor. I was 14 years old, and I remember it well, and I remember talking to some of my buddies. I said, you know, this war might last long enough that me and you might have to be in this war. And sure enough, we were.
Okay. Now the next question is to tell us about a favorite memory of your dad. Of your dad. What's one of your favorite memories you have of your father?
Favorite memory of my dad is, and I've told this before, and I'm proud to tell it again. Probably one of the favorite memories I remember that I was out of the Navy and went back to high school and played football, and my dad had went through 3 or 4 and 5 strokes, and his body was ravaged so much with strokes, and I can remember him hobbling out to Parker High School with a walking cane and coming out to see me play football, and knowing he had a hard time getting out there and a hard time getting back with no transportation to carry him out there and back. And that was one of my favorite memories of my father, and I still cherish it to this day.
And what year was that, or approximately what year was it?
That was in 1946.
Okay, 1946. Okay, Mother, what about a favorite memory of your dad?
Well, I guess the favorite memory of my dad was when we would go on vacation, and we'd always go to the mountains and to River Falls up on 25, off of 25, and for a week and enjoy a week up there. I was just a little girl, and we would go swimming, and he would carry us on his shoulder across the river to the other side where we could play.
Mm-hmm.
And because we couldn't swim, and so every day he would load us up and take us there to swim, and we had a wonderful time.
Okay, that's good. Okay, Dad, this question is just for you, not for Mother, since she only had the one brother, John Jr. But this question for you, what was it like growing up with 5 older and 6 younger brothers and sisters? They're not exact middle of 12, but you were as close to the middle as it get, but you had 5 older and 6 younger brothers and sisters. What was that like?
Well, with that many brothers and sisters around, you had to really fight and scratch to take care of yourself. And they always picked on me. I was an early riser, and I was one designated to get up every morning, summer and winter, to start the fire, either somewhere in the cook stove with the wood stove, or in the fireplace where we had wood burning and coal burning fireplaces. The house we lived in had about 3 fireplaces, one in each bedroom. And that's how some of the things that I remember as a child with being the middle of 12 children.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Okay, now this question is who, it doesn't have to be a family member, it could be. It could be someone else, could be somebody that was a Sunday school teacher or a teacher in school or just a friend or neighbor or something, but who would you say influenced you the most growing up? Whichever one of you would like to go first. Who influenced you the most growing up?
Who influenced me the most growing up was my mother. You know, she looked after me from the time I was born to the time I left home and go into the Navy. She made all my clothes, most of the clothes she made, and I didn't know. The only thing we bought from the store was probably a pair of shoes. My mother made my overalls and my shirts and doctored me when I was sick and fed me when I was hungry. So I guess my mother influenced me more than any person on earth.
Okay, that's good. Mother, what about you? Who would you say influenced you the most growing up?
I would say I just had one brother.
Uh-huh.
Didn't have a sister, and I looked up to my brother all the time. So I would say it would be my brother, because he was older than me, and I always looked up to him to everything.
Okay. And the last question of this session, we're going to have at least a couple of more sessions, but the last question of this session is going to be, did you have a childhood nickname? And if so, what was it and how was it derived, or how did you come about getting it?
Well, me, I never had a nickname. I really never did have a nickname.
They just called you John?
They just called me John or Johnny. My sister, Ophelia, called me Johnny from the time I was born and to the time she died. That wasn't a nickname. I just never did have a nickname like some people have.
Okay. So even when you was playing, I don't know if you're growing up, you maybe about grown, time you went to Parker and played football, you didn't have a nickname on the football team? They still just called you John?
Well, I had a buddy in the Navy. He was a Russian, and sometimes he had a habit of reading my mail, and I had an aunt that lived over in Lyman. Her husband was a Methodist preacher. I'd get mail from them, and they'd come on the envelope where it said return. It had from turkey paw.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know, probably you never heard of turkey paw. It was over about Lyman.
Uh-huh.
And that's where they lived, in Turkey Paw, South Carolina. And we called him Russian. He had a nickname. Everybody called him Russian. And he called me, he looked at me and he said, Tupikin. Said, I have never heard of Tupikin. And he hung that name on me while I was in the Navy. He called me Tupikin.
Tupikin during the Navy? Well, okay.
That's the only nickname I really ever had.
Okay, Mother. What about you? Did you have a nickname as a child or growing up in high school or a child?
Yes, I did.
What was it?
Well, as a child, as a young child, and a baby, my nickname, my daddy called me Sister.
Sister?
But as I got older, he still called me Sister, but my other name was, I played sports, and I played basketball, and I guess I was just kind of a rough player, and I had this boy that just called me Muscles one day, and that stuck with me from that day on. In fact, right now, people at Woodside, the older people and the seniors that's still living, still calls me about that name.
Muscles?
When they see me, they still say Muscles.
Okay.
When I go to the reunion over there and put my name on my nameplate, they say, they don't know who I am. They said, you need to put Muscles on there and we'll know who you are.
Okay, well, thank you. And that concludes the first round of questions and answers for the interview of John and Jean Elliott. And that's kind of appropriate that you said muscles and talking about you being a good an athlete and being and how you got that name, because the very next question that will be the first question of the next session will be, where were you a good athlete? And